I would like all of you to close your eyes for just few seconds and think about this topic of dynamic pricing. Can you all just spend few seconds doing that? You can open your eyes. Now, whenever I've asked this question to my audience, some of the common things that have popped up in people's mind is, I'm trying to book a Uber taxi and suddenly the prices have gone up. I'm trying to book a flight ticket and my prices have gone up. And that's what you typically will associate with dynamic pricing. That here are a bunch of companies, bunch of corporates who are trying to fleece my hard-earned money. And today, through this talk, it would be my objective to clear some of the myths around dynamic pricing, how it actually makes world a better place. And I hope that many in the audience will go back to their businesses, go back to their campuses, and find out new ways of using dynamic pricing and making world a better place. But let's first start why there is so much ruthlessness around dynamic pricing. Why do the world thinks that this is the next villain in a Bollywood movie? Whereas that's not the case. Because if you look, majority of the times we think of dynamic pricing as a way where companies are trying to make a balance between demand and supply. There is excess demand in the market. I have a limited amount of inventory. Let me charge people higher money. We see this happening with flight tickets. We see this happening with taxis. We see this happening lots of times with potatoes, tomatoes. And this seems like a common behavior. But and part of the reason this happens is, this subject is not very well understood. That dynamic pricing is not just about making more money, but it is actually about impacting human behavior. And let me explain why I say that this impacts human behavior. Now imagine a taxi business. Now before Olas and Ubers came, people were able to book taxis, popular taxi services like Merus of the world. You were able to book online by calling. So digitization of services was never a problem. But those companies all had a very fixed pricing model. And you look at what were the use cases where people were using taxis for. Office goers were predominantly using their own vehicles, or they were using public transport. College students were using public transport. They were not very big fan of taxis. And I remember my own college days where in my 4 years of engineering, I never once even used taxi services because those are very expensive, right? If people were going on vacations, they had flights to catch, they had meetings to attend to, they had intercity travel. Those were the strong use cases where taxi services were used because those were predominantly on a higher side. Now, next came this wave of Ola, Uber, Lyft of the world. Now, what did these companies do? They looked at the entire travel market. They said, we have travel services, taxi services available. They're not very well utilized. There are time periods during the day where taxi driver is sitting idle. Why don't I drop prices and make it more attractive for people to travel? And they did that beautifully. And then they also realized that even office goers, when they're returning back from offices in the evening, they don't want the hassle of traffic congestions, parking, and they're willing to pay a higher price. Therefore, why don't I charge them a fair amount and give discounted services to my rest of my travelers? If you look at how this entire dynamic changed the taxi consumption patterns, for daily commuters, the taxi consumption of the entire set of services was less than 5%. Today, more than 50% of taxi consumption happens for daily commuters. This has changed the ownership models of cars also. People find it much more convenient to use taxi services rather than having their own cars. And the biggest change that has come in this entire process is dynamic pricing, which made services very affordable for some set of people at certain points of time and charged a fair amount of value to other people when they were right opportunities available. So if a new taxi driver has to launch its services, rather than making it a Kali Pili taxi or a Meru taxi, the first preference is to make it a Ola and Uber taxi. Why? Because they end up making more money. So if you look at the entire ecosystem consisting of taxi owners, travelers, even government making more, government who gets money in the form of taxes, everyone has actually benefited. taxi drivers who were earlier making hardly 500-600 rupees a day, they easily make close to 3,000 rupees earnings by doing this, by having their taxis run on dynamic pricing. The average price per kilometer for taxi riders has gone down. If you compare what the prices used to be pre-dynamic pricing era, the rates used to be very high, but now those are considerably lower. And government is making more money in the form of taxes, because the earning of the entire market has grown bigger, so the pie has grown bigger, and it is attracting many more uh, taxes revenues for the government. Now here the beautiful thing to notice is how the entire ecosystem has created a win-win scenario for everyone. Now I often get asked, is dynamic pricing a very simple piece? Can I just use price elasticity numbers and decide what should the prices that I charge for my different customers? Well, this price elasticity concept is a very old concept. Now companies are not looking at just one customer base, but parallelly you are looking at multiple customer bases together. Now you can't have one price elasticity number anymore. You can't base your entire pricing approach on just price elasticity concept. Yes, if you want to use compute price elasticity numbers, you can use any of the LLM models, and LLM models like ChatGPTs and others will easily give you price elasticity numbers, but that number will not tell you much. What we really need in today's world, if you truly want to adopt dynamic pricing, is a network of agentic AI. Agentic AIs that are consistently understanding how my customers are responding to my prices, which sets of customers are seeing a favorable response, I'm seeing favorable response, which sets of customers I'm not seeing favorable response, and what prices is working, what prices is not working. We call this as a reinforcement learning approach. So we can't have a static pricing approach, we can't have a static elasticity approach. Rather, we need to have a self-learning pricing mechanism where system is learning on its own the behavior of its customers, the behavior of the stakeholders in the entire ecosystem, and how it is playing out and making everybody's life better. Now, in doing so, when we use agentic AI in a very powerful mode, it reveals some hidden gems. For example, this is coming from our own experience. We have, when people are traveling long distance, people have multiple options, especially in a place like India. You have options of traveling by bus, traveling by train, or you can even travel by flights. Is it, can you imagine buses pricing higher than flights? Is it even possible? Well, agentic AI and reinforcement learning identifies that yes, there are certain pockets of customers who travel in a very limited time during the day where they prefer bus services even higher than what they prefer flights, and they're willing to pay a price even higher than what they're willing to pay for flights. So these are the kinds of hidden gems you discover when you are taking a very strategic and data driven approach for doing dynamic pricing. And well, dynamic pricing is going to impact our lives in multiple ways. You will soon see dynamic pricing helping cities reduce traffic congestion. Has it occurred to anyone, how can dynamic pricing actually eliminate traffic congestion? It's already being done in certain parts of the world where they call it under the name of congestion pricing. Well, we all have experienced personalized discounts, personalized giftings. Yes, the dynamic pricing is going to help people meet their aspirations. It will give access of high-end services to people who can't afford products at a regular price. For example, if somebody wants to travel with their family to a nice vacation area, they want to take their family in a flight, stay in a good 4-star or 5-star property, at regular rate they will not be able to do. But yes, through dynamic pricing there will be occasions where access of these high-end services will be available to people at very affordable prices, which will help them meet their aspirations. So whenever you're looking at price tags next time, what I would say is, don't look at whether this price is right or wrong, but think, what is this price telling me? Thank you so much.